Last year, Honda invited us to Japan to test drive their newest SUV that was to head to India this year, the BRV. So Rohit obliged and sampled the SUV at the Twin Ring Motegi circuit and gave you his first impressions. But that was a controlled environment and perhaps Rohit didn't get to drive as much as he would have liked. Well, now we've got the BRV right here in India, on our roads, in the real world conditions. It's time to find out as much as we can about Honda's new SUV. Let's get this out of the way first. The BRV is a full-sized SUV. It is larger than its sister MPV, the Mobilio, in every dimension. The front end is easily the most pleasing angle to view it from. It is the one angle that does most justice to his claim of being an SUV. The chunky chiseled bonnet reeks masculinity. The headlight cluster, the solid wing grille with a chrome band make it one of the smartest designed front ends in its segment. The tail too has its share of striking design elements. I've always fancied connected tail lights, but it's actually the side profile that will divide the most opinions. The chink in the rear window shoulder line is for increasing the rear window size for the benefit of the rear passenger. The massive rear overhang is to accommodate a third row and sufficient boot space, but then sometimes design pays a price for practicality, and the BRV's side profile is Exhibit A. But the one dimension that will please most Indians is actually the ground clearance of 210mm. With time though, the BRV's design does manage to grow on you, especially when you reap the benefits of what's in store for you on the insides. Unlike the Renault Duster and like the Mahindra XUV 500, the BRV also comes with 3 rows of seating, so you do have 2 row seats in the back, front-facing row seats, unlike the annoying jump seats that you've seen on the sub 4-meter 7-seaters on our market. Now these are fairly usable even for tall people like Rishad. And you also have a blower that faces them directly. You've got rear seat belts and some usable storage spaces. So I do think that this is one of the most usable third rows in the market right now. Not only does the BRV boast of best-in-class room for its passengers, all 7 of them, but also a decent amount of boot space. A very usable 223 litres with the third row up and 691 litres with the 2 seats folded up. It's also got a very low loading area, the tiny downside to which is that the spare wheel is on the underbody. So the size of the BRV does translate to a lot of usable space on the insides, but how happy will the occupants be? Well, the quality of materials and the general build quality is quite impressive. And if the interiors of the Mobilio were too plain Jane for you, you'll like the BRV's interiors. They're still not as striking or flashy as some of the other SUVs, but I think therein lies its beauty. It is in fact very similar to the one on the new Amaze with a few changes. But my concern is perhaps that the interiors are a little bit too subdued for a sporty SUV, and then there's that equipment list. There's no touchscreen, no rear camera or parking sensors or cruise control or many of the features that you have on offer with most other SUVs in its class. What it does have, however, is automatic climate control and start-stop and Bluetooth connectivity for the infotainment system. No surprises in the engine department. We knew exactly the engines that were coming down to India. So you have the 1.5 litre iVTEC petrol engine and you have the 1.5 litre iD-Tech diesel engine, which is only offered in the Indian car market. Now let's talk about the diesel. That's the car that I'm driving right now. It's made it with this 6-speed manual gearbox that's tuned for efficiency, but it also has a very friendly driving characteristic. Now there's little from the engine till about 1500 RPM. And after about 3,500 RPM is when it starts tapering down. So all the chunk of the meat is between 1,500 and 3,500 RPM. Now Honda claims that they've been working very hard to reduce the NVH levels inside the BRV's cabin, and they've added a lot of insulation layers. Now you can at once tell that the effort has been made, as in the noise from the road and the tires has been reduced significantly. But in the past there have been complaints regarding the diesel engine clatter coming into the cabin, and I think that's still a problem that persists. It has been reduced substantially, but it is still a problem, I feel. Now the iD-Tech engine might be very, very efficient, but one just can't help but feel that it still has some way to go in terms of refinement. The petrol is surprisingly made it a new 6-speed manual gearbox, which usually for this sort of power and torque is a bit odd. Now, Honda claims that it is to improve the driving performance, but what it essentially does is lowers the first and the last gear ratios. To be honest, I wasn't quite sure about this. While it does make some sense in a diesel because of the extra torque, in a petrol it can cause you to keep changing between the first and second gear in stop and go traffic, and thereby you keep using the clutch, which can get a little bit cumbersome. But I reserve my judgment for the road test, for the V-Boxed facts, and of course the biggest test of them all, driving it in Bombay's traffic. Now the real surprise package is the CVT automatic gearbox, because to be very honest, I've never really liked CVT gearboxes. They are great in terms of efficiency, but really not so great in terms of the driving pleasure. You've heard us complain about the rubber band effect and the lack of response n number of times, but this is different, far more responsive, and it promises to be more efficient than the manual gearbox. So when you're driving around in the city, you will definitely appreciate it. The CVT also gets paddle shifters, and the best way to get the maximum performance from it is not to floor the pedal, but to increase it gradually and use the pedals to choose a higher belt. At around a claimed 12 seconds to 100 km an hour, it still can't manage to keep up with the manual, which claims to do a ton in under 11 seconds. But for me, the best driving characteristic belongs to the 1.5-litre diesel, which is altogether friendly and more than sufficient for most conditions. While it may be a little less dramatic, the motor has a newfound tractable and usable nature. The 6-speed gearbox offers a short throw, clinky feel, and the clutch action is decently light. Unfortunately, a diesel automatic isn't an option for the time being. Now, the BRV is the car with the longest wheelbase on this particular platform. So on this wheelbase, it also manages to have the best ride quality that we've experienced so far. Better than the Mobilio, far better than the Brio and the Amaze. When you start driving and you notice this additional weight on the steering wheel, initially you might think that this might involve a little bit more effort on your part when you're driving around in the city, especially when you compare to the other lighter steering wheels that you have in other SUVs. But it's when you get to these highway stretches you realize that this added weight actually gives you a little bit of reassurance at higher speeds. It sort of contributes to that sense of stability, and in that sense, this is welcome. McPherson struts in the front, torsion beams at the back. They're sort of an ideal combination for an SUV of this size, and they do a rather good job of dealing with almost everything that the Indian roads have to throw at it. The Honda BRV offers dual airbags as standard across the range, which is a good move. A great move, however, would have been to make ABS standard, which is only offered on the diesel trims. The entry-level petrol doesn't get it, and ESP isn't even an option. So having spent the day with a bold, runabout vehicle, that's by the way what BRV stands for, what do we make of it? Now, contrary to what all of us imagined initially, the Honda BRV isn't really a compact SUV. Now, even though it is based on the Brio and the Amaze's platform, this is a fairly large vehicle. And in that sense, I do think it offers far more in terms of interior space. Space for 7 people when you compare it to the sub-4 meter SUVs like the Ford EcoSport or the Vitara Brezza. So I think it's fair to compare it to the likes of the Renault Duster or the Hyundai Creta. But where I do think that the BRV misses out on when you compare it to these SUVs is the list of equipments on offer even on the top-end variant. Now, this is why I think the pricing is going to be absolutely key. It's the missing link in the puzzle. The BRV will be launched on the 6th of May, and we will of course update you with the pricing. But if they can manage to price it anywhere close to the Renault Duster, that's the non-all-wheel drive version of it, then I think it's going to be a very strong contender in the C SUV segment.